All right, everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Man Down podcast. I'm stoked to have Adam Cousins here, and I know Adam from Jiu-Jitsu. I only went to your particular club in St. Thomas a few times, but he's going to sound like he's a super, super nice guy, and he sounds super chill, but he's actually a killer. Okay, so I just want to set the table there. But I'll turn it over to you, brother. And first of all, welcome. I'm super happy to have you here. And maybe just give a quick introduction about yourself, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jason. So my name's Adam. As you said, I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've been training for about 15 years. I'm a father. I've got 2 children. I'm a stepfather. I've got 2 stepkids. A husband. Recent cancer survivor. You can see my hair is just kind of starting to grow back now. I've been through the ringer a bit, especially in the last year. I can say that, it's been the toughest year of my life, but also the best year of my life from like a personal growth perspective. Big time.
Yeah, man. Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you because, as you are going through, some of the most terrifying, just challenging things imaginable and, beyond just cancer, which we'll get into, watching you on social media and watching the mindset you maintained and the positivity and the messages you were putting out and the growth you were experiencing, I think is super inspiring. And it's really what this podcast is all about, man. Because, ultimately life is long, it's complicated, and you never know what tomorrow holds. And ultimately, so many things are out of our control. But what is in our control is how we choose to respond. And I think you are an amazing example of what's possible while facing the most difficult circumstances. So maybe we'll just jump right into the cancer diagnosis, because I think, I'd love to hear what you were diagnosed with. But I think one of the things that anybody who has been fortunate enough not to experience that always wonders about is, what the hell is it like to actually hear those words, at the doctor's office? So take it away.
Sure. So, in January of last year, so late January 2025, I was driving to work with my wife Wilma, and I had this like pain, this sort of pain, sort of discomfort in my chest for a couple weeks. Doing jujitsu, I'm used to aches and pains, and you kind of write most of it off. But this one had kind of just been hanging on, and I had felt like certainly some shortness of breath. And I was driving to work, and I was actually thinking to myself, like, man, I bet you, like, I wonder how many guys, have like chest pains and then don't say anything to their spouses or their family, and then they just drop dead of a heart attack. And I still didn't say anything, but I certainly had that thought go through my head. And so I'm at work that day, and as the day goes on, like this discomfort is just getting more and more intense, to the point where it's like I'm now having, like, it hurts to take a deep breath, like this stabbing sort of pain, shortness of breath. So I did the thing that you're not supposed to do, which is Googled like symptoms of a heart attack, right? And then I immediately thought I was having a heart attack. So I texted my wife. We both work downtown, so I drop her off, and then I go to my office, and I said, I think I might be having a heart attack. I think what I said was, I have an all-day meeting tomorrow, so if I'm still feeling crappy after the meeting, then I'll go to the hospital. And she said, no, you're going to go to the hospital now.
So can I jump in there? So because I think what you said is super important, right? I mean, men, we don't want to be vulnerable. We hate feeling out of control. So you're actually concerned you might be having a heart attack, but still not treating it with the urgency that your wife clearly wanted you to treat it with. Like, so how do you explain that as you think back on it?
I don't know that I can explain it exactly. I think it was just like, I don't know. It was like I had an all-day meeting the next day. It was fairly important. I'm like, well, it's just I just have like a pain in my chest. Like, I'm sure it's nothing. I think one of the things that I was worried about, and probably one of the reasons I said that I wanted to hold off, because I distinctly remember going into Emerge, and they're like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I think I'm having a heart attack. Like, it felt weird to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, it felt like I'm wasting your time. basically, right? Because I'm like, it's probably nothing. Um, but yeah, I think there was like a hesitation, certainly on my part, to be like, you know, I didn't want to waste anybody's time.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, yeah, so I go into Emerge, and I say I think I might be having a heart attack. They give me a baby aspirin, and they do an ECG, and they say, okay, it doesn't look like you're having a heart attack. We're going to do some blood work, and we'll do a chest X-ray, and we'll go from there. So the doctor, they do the chest X-ray, they do the blood work. They say, okay, blood work's clean, because I guess when you have a heart attack, there's like there's some markers that they can see in the blood. The doctor comes back after a while after the chest X-ray, and he says, "Oh, sorry, it took me so long. I was talking to an oncologist," and that kind of an oncologist. That's weird. And he said, "Have you been sick lately?" And I had just gotten over like a really bad sort of like upper respiratory cold thing. So I said, "Yeah," and he's like, "Okay, well, you have pneumonia." So put me on antibiotics, sent me on my way. And then over the next couple months, I continued to train, teach 2 days a week. So continued to train. I was definitely noticing I was still short of breath. I waited a while until I was done the antibiotics to go back to training. But as the months went on, I'm like, oh, it's been a while, but I still feel like not 100%. I didn't have that like pain, discomfort in my chest anymore, but it was like I still had that shortness of breath. I would get winded really quickly. So I actually went back to my family doctor. Since I turned 40, I'm 40. What year is it? I'm 43 now. Since I turned 40, I kind of made a commitment to, take care of my health a little bit better. All the things that kind of nag you for a long time, but you never really deal with. So I'm like, okay, I'm still feeling weird. I'm gonna go back to my doctor. I said, I still don't, still not 100%. So she's like, okay, we'll send you for a follow-up X-ray. This would have been April of 2025. So I go for the follow-up X-ray on the Friday, and then the Saturday that weekend we were camping with some friends. We've got a trailer, so we were like 3 or 4 couples, kind of got our trailers together, and we were doing some brewery tours out in Norfolk County. So the Saturday morning I wake up. So I had the X-ray on the Friday. Saturday morning I wake up and I feel like I'm like, oh, like I've got really bad like heartburn or something. I'm like, oh, maybe I need to like, I don't know, maybe I just need to burp or something. And I sat up all the way, and then the room just started spinning, and like to the point where I like my wife was asleep beside me. Like I woke her up. I'm like, something's not right, and I was just really out of it. She said she handed me a glass of water, and it just fell right out of my hand, and that lasted a couple minutes. I was like gasping for breath. That lasted a couple minutes, and then I started to feel a little bit better. And I'm like, we're like, what was that? And she said, maybe it was a panic attack. And as we'll talk about, there was a lot going on in other things in my life at that time that was creating a lot of stress. So I said, yeah, maybe it was a panic attack. Had a nap. I'm like, maybe I'll just nap for a bit and see if I feel better. Woke up, felt better, not 100%, but a little bit better. And we had breakfast. One of the couples had made breakfast, so we all sit down together. And one of the women sitting across from me says, Adam, are you okay? And I had felt like that wave sort of hitting me again. And she goes, you're turning gray. And then I said, I'm having a heart attack. And so I called 911. Ambulance came. They do the ECG in the ambulance. They said, doesn't look like you're having a heart attack. Go to the hospital. They do the blood work. Blood work's clean. Chest X-ray. So the doctor comes back with the chest X-ray, and Wilma was with me. And he said, there's something you haven't told me. I said, well, what do you mean there's something I haven't told you? And he goes, you had a CT scan. I said, no, I haven't had a CT scan. He goes, well, you need a CT scan because you had a 9-centimeter mass in your chest in January, and it's 11 centimeters now.
What the hell?
So that was the first sort of like, oh okay. So he referred me. He's like, I'll refer you for a CT. But because I was in Norfolk, he's like, I have to refer you to Simcoe, which was fine. He I got an appointment for the next Thursday, and we were going to be in Norfolk County with the same group that weekend anyway. So I said, okay. Just went
What's
on.
going through your head between like
So
these at
yeah,
this time?
at this point it was like, I think I was still in the headspace of like, it's probably nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's probably just some weird thing that's just nothing, right? And I think I was avoiding dealing with the possibility that it was cancer for sure, um, but knowing that there was a decent likelihood that that's what it was. My family doctor on first thing Monday morning, she saw the X-rays. She calls me, says we need to get you in for a CT scan. So I said I already had one scheduled. So um, the emerge that they brought me to was like Hagersville, like West Haldeman General Hospital. It's like this tiny, tiny little hospital. But the ER doctor said, he said, when you get your CT scan, come back here. We can get the results within an hour. We can go over them with you. I said, okay. So the next Thursday, we go back out, go to Simcoe, get the CT on my chest, and then we drive back out to Hagersville. It's about, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes from there. So we're in Emerge, we wait, we get into the room, and we're just in like it's a triage room in Emerge, right? So, it's a large room with like the curtains kind of separating. There's an older couple kind of sitting right beside us there. And doctor comes in, different doctor, he comes in and he just says, "Why did you wait so long?" I said, "What do you mean?" Like I had, I thought I was having a heart attack. I called 911 immediately. He goes, "No, why'd you wait so long since January?" I said, "Well, I had pneumonia in January." And he cuts me off. He says, "No, you never had pneumonia. You have lymphoma." And then he just left. Like
Jesus.
he left the room, and then I'm on the bed and Wilma's on a chair across from me, and we're just staring at each other.
Did you know what that was?
Well, I knew it was cancer. I didn't
Right.
know, like, I knew lymphoma was cancer. I didn't know anything, and he wasn't there to explain anything after that.
Nice bedside
And
manner.
and we're just looking at each other and just blank stares for what felt like forever. And then then we started crying, and yeah, and then he came back in, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes later with a prescription, because I think that he realized that it was a little bit harsh, um, and it was a prescription for lorazepam, and he hands it to me and he goes, "This is for you, but it's really for both of you." Um, and then he left again, and it was, we went out and we sat in the truck. We were parked on the side of the road, and we sat in the truck and we cried, and called I called my mom and I called my sister to let them know. And I was thankful that we were with, Wilma said, "Do you want to go home?" And I was really thankful for the group of people that we were with, because it really helped to like make that weekend less scary for us. One of the couples, the wife is a cancer survivor herself, so you know um, that helped to give some perspective, and just like it was just such a, we're just surrounded by love that weekend. So that was really helpful.
At this point, did you? I mean, obviously it's serious, but did you know this how serious it was? Or, I mean, did they give you any more information at this point?
So not at that point, but my family doctor called me Friday morning, like 6 a.m. Friday morning. My family doctor called me because she had seen the CT results, and you know we don't know what stage it is at this point. We just know it's a lymphoma. So she's like, I'm gonna refer you to a thoracic surgeon at Vic. And that was Thursday, and like my appointment with the thoracic surgeon, or that was Friday, I guess. My appointment with the thoracic surgeon was like Tuesday. I think there's a lot of negative things you can say about our healthcare system, but like when you're in trouble, like things move quickly. So like within 2 weeks, I saw a thoracic surgeon. She said right away, she's like, surgery is not going to be an option because the tumor was, so it's about this. It was about the size of like a large grapefruit, small cantaloupe, about 700 cubic centimeters. And it was sort of wrapped around the upper part of my lung and some of the blood vessels coming out of the top of my heart. So she's like, surgery's not an option. So we needed to do, I had to do like a brain MRI to make sure that there was no cancer up there, full body CT, I had a biopsy, I had a spinal tap, like all of this happened within like 2 weeks. So then got, had an appointment with a hematologist at the cancer center in London. And so there's just a small aside, because this is something I discovered that I think, was helpful for me. There is a system called Connect My Health that services all of the hospitals basically in southwestern Ontario, like Hamilton and West. And you can create an account and you can see all of your hospital records online, including like the scans, the radiologist notes, and everything. So during this time, I'm having these scans, but I haven't had a follow-up appointment. I've been going in to this Connect My Health system and like taking like the diagnostic notes and then putting them into ChatGPT just to be like, what does this mean? And so it was really helpful because when I first met with my hematologist, she says, okay, like, what do you know about what you have? And I said, okay, it's a, primary mediastinal B-cell lymphoma. It's either stage 2E or stage 4 because there was a spot on my lung. And, it's likely that, it's going to be one of these two types of treatment. And she's like, okay, well, you know a lot. So I had about 5 months of chemo. So that kind of started sort of right away. June 19th, I think was my first week of chemo. And my chemotherapy I had a backpack that had an IV bag and a pump, and I had a PICC line in my arm that would be hooked up. And so from Monday morning until Friday afternoon, 24 hours a day, I would have chemo going through my system. I would go in once a day to get the bag changed out. They'd do blood work. And so I'd have 1 full week on and then 2 weeks off. And then that repeated for 5 months.
Wow, man. So, I mean, going back to the sort of the beginning, how would you describe the experience of, confronting your own, like basically going from feeling relatively healthy to confronting the chance you might die? Like, what is that actually like?
It was surreal for sure. It was surreal. I think the thing, I got myself, I've never been like a journaler. I'm the kind of person that has a hard time like sticking to something. I'm just very like ADHD about most things. But I got a journal because there was like, I wanted somewhere to put like the dark thoughts, you know what I mean? Like my wife and I have an amazing relationship, but like there's some things that's like, this is too dark to share. And, to answer your question, I think the thing that I had the hardest time with was like thinking about the impact that me leaving would have on the people around me, from the perspective of like when Woman and I go camping, like I hook up the trailer and like I know how to do all those things, and like she doesn't know how to do those things, and like how is she gonna go camping if I'm not here? And like that was the thing that was the hardest for me, was just like people have things that they rely on me to do that I may not be here to do.
Man. And you're a dad and a stepdad. I mean, I have to think that's every parent's biggest nightmare, is leaving their kids behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And at this time too, like, and we'll get into it, but I was awaiting the results of our family court trial throughout chemotherapy. So it's like, like I may die and never get any resolution to this at all.
Did you, are you like, I was going to ask if you're a religious person, but I mean, maybe a more general question is, at the time, what did you think happened when you die? And has that changed? Like, has that changed at all as a result of going through this experience?
I wouldn't say so. No, I don't think so. I was raised I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic elementary school, Catholic high school. I've always told people, like, if there's if there was one thing that going to Catholic school taught me, was to be very cautious about religion. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, just because I think that my experience showed me that there's a lot of hypocrisy amongst a lot of people who practice. But no, like, in terms of like what happens after, I don't think I ever really thought about that. But I can say that, like, I don't believe that there is anything. Like, I don't think there's like, oh, I'll be there watching over my family. Like, I don't think I ever had those type of thoughts,
Gotcha.
as much as I would like to.
What is the thought process like? Like, not just the moment of like telling your kids what's happening, but like the thought process of like the process, like deciding how to tell them. Like, I mean, what, how does that work? How does that work?
Yeah, I would say, like, um, with my children, and sort of alluded to the family court thing, that was a lot more complicated. Um, with my stepchildren, we've always been, and their mom has always been very open with them, um, about a lot of things. And so it felt sort of natural to have that conversation with them, if I can say that. Like, we talk about big things with them, so that kind of helped to prepare us to have this conversation. It also helped that we didn't tell the kids immediately. We wanted to wait until we knew like what we were dealing with. And that first meeting with the hematologist, I had asked her, I'm like, is there any like clinical trials or anything that we should be looking at? And she said something to me, and whether she was, sincere or just trying to make me feel better, she's like, Adam, we got this. And like, that that made everything feel so much better, and that gave me a lot of like, um a lot of uh courage, I guess, going into it. So, when we told the kids, it wasn't like, I've got cancer and I'm going to die. It's like, I've got cancer, and it's going to be a tough battle, but we're going to get through this.
So like, I mean, how do you get to you're basically confronted with the most terrifying news probably somebody could get. Like, what was the process of deciding or choosing to how you were going to approach this from the mindset like point of view? Because again, I saw the stuff you posted. I mean, and obviously we all have incredibly dark moments as well. I think sometimes people think that it's almost like an either or, whether it's me grieving the loss of my daughter or you going through this, confronting your own death. You're putting these incredibly positive, uplifting, inspiring messages out into the world. At the same time, that's not all it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's fucking dark shit, man. I'm sure. So
Yeah.
like I guess, yeah. How did you think about all that?
So I think, the other piece that we'll get into, with my kids, for, that went on for 10 years. And for like 5, 6 of those years, I never talked to anybody about it. I didn't even talk to my own family about it. They were aware generally of what was going on, but that sort of prepared me in a way for this, because what I discovered was that, when I was suffering, in silence alone, it was so I was alone, right? It was just so isolating. And when I made the decision, through the encouragement of some amazing friends and my wife, to start talking a little more openly about what I was going through, I found that, like, it sort of learned the power of like being vulnerable, right? And the way that people respond. And, you know, so I think it sort of felt natural with the cancer diagnosis that, like, that I would be very open about it. Um, because I knew that, or I was confident that, that the people around me, like, were going to be there for me. And I don't think I was even, sharing in order to, like, oh, I want sympathy, or I want you to send me well wishes. It was just like, I realized that it was therapeutic to just like put those thoughts out into the universe, right? Just to say it out loud, right? To talk about the things that you're scared about and the things that you're going through in itself is therapeutic.
100%, man. I always say, because I learned the same, I learned the same lesson a long time ago, and it, I always think of it as we're just always surrounded by, whether that's people who are, physically close to us or relationally close to us, or even just people who are out there, reading or listening to the stuff we say. We are surrounded by people who are just waiting for somebody else to fucking go first, man. And when you do that, it is wild. Like how you make it safe for other people to do that.
Dude, I was absolutely blown away by the the conversations and the connections I've had over the last year. Like like people that even people that I don't know that well, acquaintances, right? Would reach out to me, and a number of people said, Adam, I thank you, thanks for sharing your story. I went through this, and maybe it was a cancer story, and I had a friend um, who had a close family member die from cancer, um, and he said, I was just like, cancer scared me so much, but seeing your post like helped me to be less scared of it, because okay, I see there's a good story now. Or like people, I had a few people message me to share their own cancer journey. Then I didn't even know that they had cancer, right? And they're like, I don't really talk about it, but like, I went through this, and it's just like it just created such an amazing opportunity to connect with people on like a way deeper level than I ever have before.
Absolutely. I think too, and I think I'll switch gears to your kids in a minute, and then we'll come back and to because I just I think obviously it's such an important part of, and they these stories run sort of in parallel. But I think too, and I'm curious about your thoughts about this. But I kind of think we we are able to love, like our capacity to love another human being, for example, is kind of dictated by the circumstances we face. So I think of like myself with my wife, and I think, okay, well, before Chloe died, I I loved her as much as it was possible to, I think, for me to love another human being. Like it was incredibly deep. And Chloe's death has increased my capacity to love her. Like because I know, I mean, dude, I don't know, I don't know what I would have done if she was not walking beside me, and to have somebody show up like that way, and still doing that to this day. Like it I sometimes think of it like I don't know, I almost think of like my the way I love her is almost like, sort of like at the same time, like down to the subatomic level, like it's out to the edge of the universe at the same time or something. But like how is going through this, like obviously you already knew you had an amazing wife in Wilma, but how has it changed your capacity to love her, or how you kind of perceive that?
Yeah, that was beautifully said, man. It's like looking at the world like with a new set of glasses, right? And I see. I think with Wilma especially, it's like I I see things that I may not have seen before. Do you know what I mean? Like the little things. Like I see the love in the little tiny things. But absolutely, I think, and I was always, I always felt like I was like surrounded by love, and I had an amazing relationship. But, yeah, this has certainly, what we've been through, um, what she's, you know, sat through with me, um, just has, I fall in love with her every day.
God, man, both crying now. Jesus, yeah. No, it's just that's beautiful, man. Like it's it's funny. My daughter and I were watching the movie Cinderella, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So my
Russell
daughter and I
Crowe.
were yeah,
Yeah.
amazing movie, man. Like, and so we were watching that, and we're basically, it's at this part where he's like completely down and out, and he's doing everything he can and nothing's working. He can't get work. He's broken his hand and all this shit. And he's like, just, as a father, to be unable to provide for your family is I was talking to Mel about it when we were watching. I'm like, it's like for a dad to not like that cuts about as deep as it gets, man. Like it is such a that's our job, is to provide for our fucking family, and to not be able to do that, and then to be met with um by his wife with just like undying love, man. Like I was bawling because I like I mean, a, it's because it's beautiful, because I can relate it to my own situation, and man, I'm just so grateful, just so grateful for it.
Yeah. I'll share a really quick story that you remind me of there. I went to watch, um, I always like, when the kids were in elementary school and high school, like my stepkids, I would always take a day with each of them during March break and just like, we're just going to do whatever you want to do for the day. And one year, Caden, my stepson, he wanted to go to the movies. He was probably, I don't know, 12, 13. And we went to watch the Lego Batman movie. We went to play some VR games, and then we went to watch Lego Batman. And I'm in the theater watching Lego Batman, bawling my freaking eyes out, man. Like, and he looked over at me like, dude, like something is wrong with you.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's the same thing. Like, there's like, Batman's got this complicated relationship with his parents, and all of these themes of family and children, and just like, it just hit me, man. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, man. I love it. Well, yeah. So why don't we rewind a little bit? And because you've alluded to it a couple of times, and I know you've got an
yeah,
incredibly difficult story related to your kids. So, I mean, maybe start wherever you want. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So I'll have to go back, unfortunately, a fair bit to
Yeah.
give some context here. So, um, 2008, my first daughter was born. I was married in 2007. My first daughter, Caitlin, and then my son Noah was born in 2011. I go back to then because the kind of the day that my daughter was born, my relationship with the kid's mom like fundamentally changed. And I think when you become a new parent, that's true, right? The relationship is going to fundamentally change. You go from as being a couple to now you're a family, you're a parent, you've got a life to provide for, right? Um, but it changed in such a way that like we were never like a couple again. We were just two parents with children, right? Like from the day that my daughter was born to the day that we separated, we never like went out for a dinner together or went to a movie together. We never had like an adult night. We never even like had a babysitter because she was so afraid of anybody watching the kids. And that, so my daughter was born, and I was young. Like I was would have been 25 when Caitlin was born, and she went through, as a lot of kids do, sort of like like stranger anxiety around a few months of age. And I was young and I didn't know what to do. And she would cry, and her mom would take her from me, and then she would feel better. And I'm like, okay, well, this is good. But it never really got better, to the point where it started to create a lot of tension in the relationship where, it was like, okay, if Caitlin's crying, like I'd like you to let me try to deal with it rather than, swooping in. And we just fundamentally disagreed on that.
Hey, can I ask you a question real quick? So
Yeah.
when you look back with the benefit of hindsight, to before you had kids, were there like behaviors or characteristics that are much more obvious now, like looking back on it, that were kind of, I don't want to say red flags, or like warning signs that like she might be this way? And the reason I'm asking is because that was a very similar to experience that I had, in the sense that, when I was younger, like my first wife, before she took her own life, she dealt with all these like she had mental health issues for sure, but and she would do these things, but I was too young, I didn't understand them, but also I wanted shit to be good. And so like what I kind of I didn't, I ignored them. I treated them as like these one-off things that instead of like being able to put the pieces together. And then obviously it all, after kids were born, it was just like, fuck, all the puzzle just completely either fell into place or completely fell apart or whatever. So I'm curious what, as you look back on it, if there was things you saw that maybe you didn't see back
Oh,
then.
no, 100% yes. And I think, it's what you said. It's that new relationship, like, oh, everything's good and rosy, and like, oh, that was just a little thing, and I'm sure that's fine. And and I think the other thing too is that I grew up my whole life very much being a people pleaser, right? So I would contort myself into whatever shape necessary to appease or to make things good, or make people happy. um and then, yeah, you just look past all the things that with the power of hindsight, you look back and like, how could I not have seen this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, so take it back. So these things
Yeah,
start
yeah,
happening.
yeah. Okay, so then, my son Noah was born in 2011, and things were already like not good. And it's just like, things are not good. Let's add another child to this. Maybe that'll fix it. We never had that conversation.
Right, right, right.
But I think that's kind of what we were both thinking. Like, by this point, we were both living two very separate lives in the same house. I was working either afternoons or nights. I would get up, I would make dinner for the family. I would go to, that's around the time I started training jujitsu. So, things weren't good at home. So what do? You throw yourself into something else, right? So, I was working nights. I would wake up, I would make dinner for the family. I would go drive into London. I would train for 3 hours. I'd drive to work. I'd have like 45 minutes. Sometimes I'd take a nap in the car. I'd get changed for work, go work all night, finish work, go to gym in the morning, come back, go to bed, and do it all over again, right? So, I wasn't home a lot. Things weren't good with my wife. The kids were causing a lot of stress, just because it was this, it was getting to the point where, like, oh, I'd like to take Caitlin to, like, do this today, and like, well, I'm not comfortable with that, or she's not ready for that, you know. And so things just kind of came to a head, and in 2014, we separated. And me being sort of people pleaser person that I am, at first I had retained a lawyer, and my ex said, well, I heard about this guy and he's really mean. So I canceled the retainer.
My God,
And
dude, this is exactly fucking what happened to me. The literal exact same thing.
oh my God. And so she's like, the kids are, I'm like, I'd like to have the kids on this type of schedule. And she's like, no, they're not ready. So for the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I was going to the matrimonial home that she was still living in. I was living somewhere else. So I was going there to see the kids a couple days a week for a couple hours, like after work.
And you're
And
setting
she
this
would be
precedent now.
right. And she would be there the whole time. And then the matrimonial home sells, and she moved in with her parents. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to your parents' house to see my children. So it's funny telling this story now. It's like I'm just like screaming at my younger self, right? Um, but so the house sells, and I said, I'm not going there. Can we find like a sort of neutral location where I can see the kids? So St. Thomas Public Library it was. So I would see the kids there twice a week, and then uh, the kids would have like swimming and things like that. So I would go to those practices. But like, yeah, it would be like an hour and a half at the St. Thomas Public Library with my kids. She's there the whole time. She's not like standing there watching, but she's there, and the kids know they're there. So, kids get upset. Where do they go? They run to their mom. And like all throughout this, I'm like, we got to like, this has to be going somewhere. Like we have to like expand this. And the answer was just always, nope, the kids aren't ready. The kids aren't ready. And then, as you can imagine, so the kids were 3 and 5 when we separated. Um, you know, going to the library twice a week for a couple of weeks is, fine. Kids, there's lots to do there. But, after 2 months, after 3 months, after 6 months, after 2 years, the kids are miserable there. Right. And then they would start playing. They had like some computers there and like with educational games. And so the kids would just sit and play on the computers. And I'm like sitting beside them, like trying to like interact with them in some way. And they're just ignoring me now.
Must have been
So
so damn hard. Holy jeez.
yeah. So that like the library stuff went on until 2009, like 4 years. And by the end of it, it would be like I was seeing them like 30 to 45 minutes a week. They would just get there, they'd be miserable, and then they'd leave.
You said it went on to 2008, but wasn't Noah born in 2011?
So did I say, sorry, 2018?
2018.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, sorry. Get my decades mixed up.
No,
So in 2017, my mom was coming down. My parents live up in Aurelia, and it would have been like Caitlin's birthday. Her birthday's 3 days after mine. And so I had reached out to Sarah saying, hey, my mom's coming down. I'd like to, and all of this time, I have never once had the kids by myself with her not there, not once since the date of separation. So my mom's coming down. I would really like to be able to like pick up Caitlin and even just like take her to Tim Hortons with my parents. You know what I mean? Just so my parents have not seen their grandchild since 2014. And she said no. And so for me, that was like, okay, I need to do something about this. So I self-represented. I started an application to have regular parenting time with my kids and filed it with the court. It was like, November 2017. And that case just resolved like 2 weeks ago. So, over the intervening years, the Office of the Children's Lawyer was brought in. The court had a hard time with this one, especially at the beginning, because, I have no history of like, there's no abuse, there's no, I have no substance abuse issues, I have no, negative interaction with law enforcement. Like, so the court was like, okay, well, here's a father that, on paper looks fine, saying he just wants more time with his kids, and the children are like vehemently opposed to it, and they weren't really sure what to do with it. So the Office of the Children's Lawyer, who's like a third party representative for kids, basically, they brought in a social worker, and they, observed me with the kids and observed their mom with the kids, and then interviewed like collateral, my stepkids, Wilma, everybody. And basically they said like, this library thing is no good for anybody, and we need to start expanding this. And one of their suggestions was, okay, let's switch to, Marymount, which is, I don't know if you're familiar. It's kind of like most cities have Marymount locations. That's like it's pickups and drop-offs in sort of high conflict type of situations. So we should go there twice a week, and we should look to expand. And the kids, the whole family needs to go through essentially some type of like reunification therapy. So we found a therapist eventually that we could agree on. Went to Marymount, and it went terribly. The kids wouldn't even come in the door. And then when they did, they just cried the whole time, like to the point where Marymount said, like, if you guys try to come here again and this happens again, we're just going to deny you service, because like this is not good for anybody. So found a therapist. I did a bunch of individual work with a therapist at the start, which is I was really thankful for. Just in terms of like, my own relationship with my father. I'll get into that a little bit later. And just how to show up for the kids, how to respond. I think I was having a really hard time with that at that point, is like when the kids, because they were just being, by that point, like just outright rude to me, and like how to respond. And like I would never would respond in anger, but sometimes I'd just be like, that's not nice. And they're like, I don't care. Like, I hate you. Right. So like just learning to like try to process that and respond to that in the best way possible. And then the therapist intent was to do some work with the kids and then to bring me together with the kids. But that never happened because then COVID happened, right? So she had done some sessions with the kids and their mom. There were some delays in there. I had to, file a motion with the court to, you know, to say like, okay, Caitlin's volleyball can't take precedence over this therapy, right? Like it was like kids sports are just like here and then like everything else is here and then like your dad is like down there. That was how I felt for sure. So therapy is just kind of starting to get rolling. COVID happens. So I didn't see the kids for a number of months after the start of COVID. And then I managed to start getting virtual visits with them, which was good. And they were actually like, they were good at the beginning because we were going from like the library, which was terrible, to like, at least here, it was like, we're looking at each other. And like, I would just play silly games like, would you rather have like 3 eyes or 3 ears? You know what I mean? Like just those kind of things. Because part of it was just trying to get to know the kids too, because, these years have passed, right? We separated in 2014. It's now like 2020. And like, I don't really know much about these kids' lives over the last 6 years because I'm seeing them for 30 minutes a day at the library. And like, you're not getting into any deep conversations about anything in that time or at that location. So things went well for a little bit, but then, just like the library, the kids get bored of it. And I was doing all sorts of things. I bought Battleship and I sent half of the Battleship game to their house so that we could like play Battleship together, over Zoom or whatever. But then, that kind of started to fizzle out. And then it got to the point, kind of like with the library, where it was like, okay, we're having these visits that are sometimes 5 minutes. Sometimes they'd be 5 minutes before the kids hang up on me. And it's just like, it's no good for anybody. So that was the time, and I would say up until this point, those were all the years where like, I wasn't talking to anybody about anything. Like Wilma obviously knew what was going on, but Wilma has never met, my kids by this point. We got married in 2021. So she's now their stepmother and has never met the kids. And like Wilma and I dated for, we started dating in the middle of or the end of 2014, right? So she'd been through these whole 6 years with me or 7 years with me at this point.
What can I say?
Go
A
ahead.
question. So one of the things I often wonder is like I look at my wife now, and I look back on it in retrospect, and I'm like, you exhibited. I mean, things are great, but if I look back on it like objectively, you exhibited some terrible fucking decision making when you decided to like get together with me. Like, I mean, like it's amazing that someone. I mean, you must look back and find it amazing that at that time someone was willing to take this on, man.
Dude, like I am absolutely in awe. Like, some people come with baggage. I had like a U-Haul truck, right? Like, and I think that just goes to what we were talking about earlier in terms of like your capacity for love and like what did you see in me? Like, honestly, what did you see in me that kept you here through all of this shit? Because it was for so many years. It was shit.
Did you, I mean, at any point, like during this time, did you, I mean, because you must have felt like just you're constantly failing as a father, which is your most fundamental role, right? Like, and did you ever get into like self-destructive coping, drinking, drugs, anything like that? Like I sure did, but
thankfully not really. Wilma kept me pretty centered. The fact that I was actively involved in therapy kind of throughout this process helped as well. And I think one of the other things that like that I'll be honest, like I said this to Wilma the other day. I'm like, if it wasn't for you and the kids, like there's a good chance I wouldn't be here today. Because not that like not that my stepkids are a replacement for my children, but there was at least some, and I have such a great relationship with Wilma's kids, with our kids. They showed me that I could be a dad,
Yeah.
and that honestly, like, that kept me going, and still to this day keeps me going. Right? Is I've lost so many years with my children, um, but I'm thankful to have had the years that I have with Wilma's kids, um, because it's helped me. It's helped to show me that like I am a good dad.
Yeah, man. I can see how that would be just a incredible lifeline. Um, was their mom I don't know the word, poisoning them against you, or was it like
So I will say, and the court has now said, and so I can say yes, not in a direct way. So it's actually a good tie-in, because kind of where we're at with the court stuff is, at this point I felt like there's nowhere to go. Like, this is just going to be my life, 5 minute Zoom kids with my kids until they're adults. And that was the time when I started to be more open in talking with that situation with some close family friends. And one of those family friends said, "Hey, like, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I've got a friend who is a lawyer. She took some time off to raise her family, and she's returned to practicing law, and I think she could help you." And so that was when I retained counsel, and that was like, you know it was like the start of something new, because things started moving quickly after that. You, I think we get into habits and routines. Like, I navigated the fairly successfully navigated the court system for almost 6 years on my own. But again, the power of hindsight. As soon as I got a lawyer, like, real change started to happen. It wasn't just like going to court every 3 months, like, no update, no update, no update. It was like things started moving. And one of the first calls I had with my lawyer, she's like, "This therapist that you guys saw, was she like a reunification therapist?" And I said, "Well, yeah, on her website, it talked about reunification therapy." And she goes, "No, no, no, like, capital R reunification therapy. This is a specialized area of practice." And so she did a lot of research, and we got connected with an amazing therapist in London, um, who specializes in reunification therapy. And this is when I learned about parental alienation. So, this is a very long answer to your question, but you know, what I learned through that process, through the therapist, is she's like, it's not like, she's like, "I don't believe that Sarah is, you know, your ex is going home and speaking poorly of you to the kids." She's like, "You just don't exist in their lives. You do not exist. There's nobody talks about you. Nobody, like, my father is very close with my ex, to this day. He testified for her in our trial."
holy shit, dude?
Yeah, yeah. Um, but like, to the point where, so the kids would see my father, who lives, just outside of Peterborough, a couple times a year, but didn't make the connection that he is my father. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's like, "You've been erased, essentially. You're an interloper into this family." And so we went through a couple years of some pretty intensive work. Well, a couple years in total. The actual time was in short spurts, um, where uh, where things really started to change, and we got some really good orders from the court. My ex, she originally consented to this therapy, said, "Yep, I'm on board," and things started to change quickly, because this therapist is like, we have to break this cycle immediately, right? These Zoom calls are no good. She's like, we need to get like you and the kids together in the same room and start expanding that and start talking about like, because at this point the kids are like they have resentment towards me, right? So it's like we need to start addressing that, and there's a lot of false narratives, right? Like they believe that I've essentially just abandoned them for their whole lives. So she's like, we need to start correcting these false narratives that have been built in their heads, and I think this is the thing. Alienation's not always like oh, your father's a piece of garbage. you know it can be a lot more subvert than that, or covert. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where it's
yeah.
like, you know, if the kids say something bad and the parent doesn't say anything to correct that, then it like reinforces those behaviors. If you ask, oh, did you have fun with your dad? And the child knows that if you say yes, that's going to upset them, then, well, no, I didn't. Do you know what I mean? And these things just start to like, they build and they build and they build until like that's their reality, right? Um, so the reunification therapy, we had some great sessions, like some sessions with the kids, and they really opened up about things that they were angry about, and it was hard, but it was like I was thankful for it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, the therapist said like the worst thing, the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is apathy, right? And if they're angry at you, then that's good because we can work with that. So like I had so many firsts over those couple years. Like, we did some sessions, and then she's like, we want to quickly start moving this out into the community. So, you know, we walked to Covent Garden, like with the therapist. Like, what weirder situation can you imagine? Like me and my son, and she wanted to separate the kids for part of this too. So like me and my son and the therapist walk down Riverside, drive to Covent Market, and go have lunch together.
That must
But
have
like,
been, I mean, in a way, like the most unbelievably bizarre thing, but on the other hand, just like fucking amazing because you're making progress.
dude, like unbelievable, and like the amazing good emotions like overwhelmed the weirdness so much that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was like, okay, whatever. um oh, and I'm paying this money and I have to buy her lunch, but it is. But we go to Covent Market, and it's like, okay, now I'm having a conversation with my son, like, well, what kind of food do you like? There's all of these different food vendors here, like, what do you want? And he's like, do you like this? No. Do you like that? No. Do you like sushi? Yeah. I'm like, oh, I love sushi too. Let's go get sushi. And we go and we grab a couple rolls, and then we go and we sit together. And I'm like, do you know how to use chopsticks? And he's like, no. So I showed him a little trick that I learned from going to sushi restaurants with Wilma's kids early on when they were younger. You take the chopsticks and you break them apart, and then you take the paper wrapper and you kind of roll it up, and then you get an elastic band and tie it around the end, and then you can make like training chopsticks, right?
Nice.
So I go to the sushi place and I'm like, do you have a rubber band? And so I show them and I do it, and then now we're eating sushi together, like the smallest thing, but like so huge, so huge, right? And then that same day I had a dinner with the therapist and my daughter. We went and got burgers. We talked about because she's in high school by this point. We talk about what she wants to do after high school, and like she was always a little bit more standoffish. And the age doesn't help for sure, but like again, just such an incredible moment. And so the therapist was like, like we're going straight to like, okay, the kids are going to be like at your house. And then the kid's mom basically pulled out of the therapy, and we had a contract stating that neither of us could sort of unilaterally terminate the contract, but that happened. And then I didn't see the kids for like 8 months because the court system is not that fast, unfortunately.
God,
The
man.
wheels of justice turn slowly. So we file a motion that says she's not doing what she said that she was going to do. We need to get these kids back in therapy. So we have the motion in November. we get a decision in February, so like it's just months, just tick, the clock just ticks, right? So we get a decision that says, yep, like Sarah's not done the right thing here and we need to resume therapy. So then therapy starts back up. And in the meantime, their mom had gotten like pretty involved in like a Facebook group of like, anti, I would generally characterize it as anti-court, anti-reunification therapy. Like the court is, trafficking children kind of things. And so she's now like vehemently against this reunification therapy. But it's now kind of being forced by the court. So it gets started back up again. And the therapist is like, okay, like now we're here, like we got to raise it to here now. So like almost immediately, she's like, Adam, the kids are going to be at your house, Wednesday from 1 till 6 p.m. The kids have never been to my house at this point from the date that we separated. Kids are going to be at your house from like 1 to 6 p.m., Monday and Friday. And then the next week it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then you're going to have a weekend with them. And then we're going to start doing full week of it because this is during the summer.
What was that like for that, like that first time they came over? I mean, something that I can't imagine how intense that must have been.
It was terrifying.
I bet
it was terrifying. And one thing the therapist had suggested that was so helpful is she's like, it would be good to have somebody else there that's not like, somebody to kind of take the edge off a little bit. So it's not just like we're sitting there staring at each other. So my nephew and his then fiance came by, and he's, they're in their mid-20s. They're a lot cooler than I am. Right. So we sat, the four of us, and it was very awkward at first, but like, we sat and played like some 4-player games, like on the PlayStation. Like, I don't like, have you ever played Overcooked? Like the four of you are like working together to like make recipes sort of thing. And like, okay, we got to throw food to each other. So it was kind of collaborative. And we were all kind of sharing that experience together, and it went really well. All of those experiences went really well. When she was like, okay, then we're going to have an overnight. My wife and I like to camp a lot, and I had bought this trailer, and I had spent most of the summer basically tearing it apart and rebuilding it in anticipation of this weekend. So we had a week booked at Port Burwell. So the kids came for a night there, and I said, you two can have the trailer. I brought a tent for Wilma and I to sleep in. So I'm like, you have like a safe space that you can go to if you're feeling overwhelmed. Our nephew and his fiance were with us too, again, just to kind of take the edge off a little bit. And he brought his Switch, so we were playing some Mario Kart, and then played some like bocce ball, and then we, after dinner, had a fire and roasted marshmallows. And Jay, the kids sat out with us at that fire till like, I think it was almost midnight. Wow. And I kept saying to them, like if you guys, like if you want to go to bed, like the bed's made, like if you just need some space. And they stayed there, and we listened to music, and we joked, and we made s'mores and spider dogs, and it was just like the most surreal experience of my life.
Dude, I bet, man. Wow.
Wilma got to meet the kids for the first time, and we were both worried about that. Like, what's this going to be like, right? And they were kind to her. They were never rude to her. They were kind to her, and we all made dinners together. And those days are unbelievable. Right after that, then it was like back to school, and we were going to start full week about. So kids would be here from Monday to Monday, and then with their mom for a week. Um, and then the idea was we'd have a full week at my house, we'd have a full week at her house. We'd all go to therapy together. So their mom, the kids, myself. The weekend before, they'd come back to my house. Okay, let's talk about, were there any concerns or anything that upset you? Like, let's make a plan for the following week. And like, that was huge because like, even, in those times where they spent with me, like little things got turned into big things because of all of the history, right?
Right.
But that therapy was like, that sort of re-grounded us. And like, the therapist would be able to be like, well, correct some of those misconceptions and things like that. And there were things where the kids were like, I was upset when you did this, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, I can make a change. And then they could see that, like, okay, he's doing the thing that he said he was going to do. So they had a couple weeks. I think there was maybe 2 full weeks of them being here, and like kids are involved in like every sport imaginable. Caitlin at that point was trying out for some volleyball teams, or trying out for a volleyball team rather. Noah was playing soccer, so we're driving Noah to soccer games and practices and watching, and we're driving Caitlin to these volleyball tryouts, and Wilma's coming with me, and we're cheering her on, and like, then we're getting in the car, and like, those moments, especially after, because the kids have always been so involved in sports, those moments after the games when they're tired and they would let their walls down a bit. And those were like some of the best conversations I ever had with my kids. Just driving home and just talking about like the game and what happened, and then you just kind of slowly get into other topics, just about life and things like that. Nothing heavy, right? We're still trying to keep it sort of happy, but like, they would really open up in those moments, more than anything. We got to do a trip to my parents' place. My parents in 2024 saw their grandchildren for the first time in over 10 years. And I was so worried because they live up in Aurelia and it was the summertime. So like, if you've ever driven up, Highway 400 in the summer, on a Friday or whatever, it's just a nightmare, right? Everybody's going up to the cottage. So the drive took forever. The traffic was awful. And I'm like, oh, the kids are just they're going to be miserable. Like, this is going to go really, really poorly. And we get there, and my parents have like a small sailboat on Lake Couchiching in Aurelia there. And my mom
my uncle used to have a cottage on Lake Couchiching, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I never slept there in the summer.
But my mom had this idea that like, well, let's go to the boat. Like, we won't go out for a sail. We don't have enough time, but like, we'll go out to the boat and we'll just sit in the boat and have lunch. Right. And so we get to their house, and they have a Tesla, and, I was like in awe watching my mom and my stepdad. Like, they were just like gold star. Absolutely. Like, the kids get there, and, my mom ask them both, is it okay, if I give you a hug? And they said yes. I was blown away by that. And then, my stepdad said, hey, like, do you guys want to see what an electric car is like? So we drive to the boat, but they went with my parents, and they're explaining how electric cars work on the drive. And I was just like, Wilma and I are looking at each other like, what has happened? Like, who are these kids? And we get to the boat, and so we're all sitting, and you're kind of in the cockpits, you're facing each other, and we're just having like cheese and crackers. And, my stepfather worked for the Ministry of Natural Resources for his whole career. So he's got, oh, you guys want to see a map of the lake? And he's got the big map out, and he's got Caitlin holding one side and Noah holding the other side, and he's showing, and they're like, the kids are like into it, right? And I was just like, I don't know, it was such a surreal day. And, we get back, and my mom had noticed that Caitlin had like a Pandora bracelet. My mom said, "Oh, I've got some charms. Like, would it be okay if I gave you some?" So she gave her, and Caitlin said yes, and she gave her a couple charms, and then we had dinner there, and as we're leaving, again, my mom's like, "Is it okay if I give you guys a hug?" And yes, and they gave my parents big hugs, and I'm just like this is what I've been waiting for, right? This is what I've been fighting for all of
Dude,
these years.
that must have been so amazing, man. Holy
It
shit.
was, and uh, on the drive home, on the drive home, I have like, I'm a big music guy, and I've just got this like playlist of like, it's my sappy songs playlist, right? Because we're driving home and like everybody's asleep. Wilma's asleep, the kids are asleep in the back, and I'm just listening to like just chill music. And this song comes on by the Wallflowers called "Closer to You," and it's never a song like, I just liked the way it sounded, and and the as I'm sitting there driving, I'm realizing the lyrics are about, you know, a father who's been away from his kids. And, there's a lyric like, "Just know that when you were asleep, I got a little bit closer to you." And so once again, I'm just bawling my eyes out by myself driving home down the 401. But it's just like, it was like it all came together in that moment on that day. And it was unbelievable.
Oh, I bet, man. I bet I
And
can
then
feel that. Holy shit.
and then their mom pulled them out of the therapy, and then things started to get bad. The kids would come here, and they wouldn't they would just go up to their rooms and they wouldn't talk to me. Caitlin, who would have been, I think, in grade 10 at the time, we live within walking distance of her high school, and she would just, like, there was a couple days she just disappeared after school, and I'm texting her and she won't respond, or she'll respond and say like, "Oh, I'm just grabbing food with my friends, I'll be back in 45 minutes." Like the one night it was like 10:30 at night she shows back up, and I'm reaching out to her mom like, "Yeah, I need some help here, like, in terms of like, what are the expectations that you normally set with the kids with respect to, like, sharing your location, or letting when they're going to be home or being home for dinner." And it was just like, I never got anywhere with that. It was like, let's the kids, essentially just saying that the kids can decide for themselves. So we're not getting anywhere there, and it just continued to get like bad. Now those like after um, sport, after volleyball drives that were previously like amazing, where you know where the kids are opening up, it's now a 35-minute drive back from London, where Caitlin's, telling me what a terrible father I am the whole drive,
And
right?
is this happening because like it must be more than than their mom pulled them out of therapy? Like, was there something else going on?
No, no,
Oh,
there honestly wasn't. It was just, I think they were very aware that their mom didn't support this therapy, and I think that was a definite contributor. And the thing is, like, they'd have a week at my house and things would be good, but then they have a week at their house with their mom, where things can get spun, and narratives uh, can be formulated. And again, I'm not saying that it was as overt as that, but you would notice a difference between Friday when they left the house and then the next Monday when they come back. Like, marked, every week was worse. Um, and it all sort of culminated. We had a court date on the first day that they were supposed to come here, and the things didn't go their mom's way in court, and the kids showed up and they refused to come inside the house. Like, their mom had left, and the kids are just standing on the front porch, and they won't talk to me and they won't come into the house. So I'm calling the therapist, like, what the hell do I do here? Like, how do
hmm.
I handle this? And she's like, "Well, if they won't come into the house, then you know you guys you're having a nice Friday evening out on the porch. So you and Wilma just go about your business, you know, get food, make sure there's food for them if they want it, you know. So like we had just got back from camping. So I'm like, you know, cleaning camping stuff on the front lawn while the kids are just sitting there. And then, you know, it's time for them to go home because they were just going to be there for a few hours that day. And I'm like, okay, I'll drive you home. No, and they refused. So they just take off. So then now Wilma and I are kind of following them to make sure they're okay. You know, their mom lives like, I don't know, 5-minute walk from here. It's not that far, right? But yeah, and then they just stopped coming. So their mom had to drop off luggage, like their belongings for the week. The idea was they would get dropped off on Monday morning, Monday evening after school, the kids would come here and their stuff would be here. So one Monday, yep, their stuff gets dropped off. Text the kids, hey, what time will you be here? I hear nothing. The kids never show up. You know, I start to get worried. I message their mom. They're at her house. I look inside the luggage. It's not even clothes that they wear, right? It's, you know, it's Noah's soccer jersey from 2 years ago that wouldn't even fit him. Like, and I'm like, oh, they're never coming back. Like this isn't just like a one-off. And they never did.
Holy shit.
And so
I can't even imagine what a fucking emotional roller coaster this was, man. Like, so you mentioned it like it got resolved a couple of weeks ago. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So when the kids stop showing up here, again, we go back to the court to say, hey, like we need some remedy here. And the court at that point, so we had the one judge had sort of been case managing it, which is good because for anybody who hasn't sort of gone through that, you often you see a different judge every time you're in court, right? So they may or may not have any context about your case. But we had one justice who was great, who had offered to case manage it. So she was kind of following it along. She had heard one of the prior motions, so it was good. And so we say, okay, the kids have stopped coming, and like we believe that this was a, you know, orchestrated thing because this luggage, these clothes aren't even clothes that they wear. And the court says, you guys have to go to trial. They basically said, we tried. I had hoped that we could help you through this, but it's clear that we can't. You guys need a trial. So this would have been like, it was the start of back to school. So let's call it September 2024. And we got like they're like, your trial date is like, you're starting in December of 2024. So a short turnaround, which in a way is good, but less time to prepare. It was Thanksgiving that year, and my lawyer calls me and, you know, to talk about trial, and then we're kind of left with like, you know, as you can imagine, trial is not cheap.
Yeah, shit.
And so it took us a long time to like, and this is where, you know, you talk about, you know, the women in our lives and how incredible they are. Like, again, you know, Wilma has no relationship with my kids. She's met them a few times. And we're talking about, you know, about high, you know, 5 figures costs for a trial into potentially 6 figures for children that she doesn't even know. And she said to me, she's like, you know, if you need to do this, then we're going to do this.
Oh, Jesus Christ, man. You're killing me here.
And, you know, I said that I don't know if I would be able to live with myself if I didn't know that I had tried everything. And so we agreed to go to trial. So trial started in December of 2024. Yep. December of 2024. Ended up being supposed to be 2 weeks. Ended up being a 3-week trial, 14 days. And it was like, you know, talk about like opening wounds, right? Like every, you know, not only, you know, are you reliving some of the worst moments of your life. You know, every mistake you've ever made, every indiscretion you've ever made is laid bare, by the opposing party. And so we had a 3-week trial, and it was grueling. It ended in January of 2025. And as we were talking about earlier, my first trip to Emerge was like 2 weeks later. So we had just wrapped up trial when I got the cancer diagnosis. The judge was reserved for 6 months to write his decision, but had hoped to do it within 3 months. But the court system is understaffed. I'll say that. So I got the outcome of that trial, and I'll tell you. So what we had asked for in trial was something called a protective separation for a period of 180 days. So we said we would like the court to remove the children from their mom's care for a period of 180 days where they can't have any contact with her, and they would be with me, and we would be actively involved in therapy as a, and this is, it was something that the reunification therapist said, like, they need a break. Like, we need to we need a reset. And this is really the only way to do it because their mom clearly does not appear to be supporting this process. So that is what we had asked for. And so I'm going through chemotherapy, and every week it's like nothing and nothing and nothing. And I said to my lawyer at one point, I'm like, I am going to be diagnosed with and recover from stage 4 cancer in less time than the court can render a decision. And we got the decision from the trial on the Monday of my last week of chemo, October 3rd. The decision from the trial came out. And the judge said, court made a declaration, which is sort of a new thing, which is good, saying that my ex was primarily responsible for me not having a relationship with my children, which, especially at the time, felt hollow to me. Because the court also said, we don't think a protective separation is going to be successful because the kids have been so alienated against us. So it was like, and they found that, the kid's mom had not followed multiple court orders. And so then there was, okay, now we're making submissions for costs. So the way the court trials work is that the party who wins or is more successful would normally get costs to them. And essentially I lost because I didn't get what I was asking for. So she was more successful, but the court found that she had acted in bad faith, and so costs got awarded against her. So costs were awarded to me, and that was what we just got like last week or 2 weeks ago, was the cost award. But with that court decision, it really and I think this is maybe where we have some common ground. Maybe I don't know. It's a different kind of grief. So I have no relationship with my children. They're very much alive. They're very much alive, which I'm thankful for. But me losing my children wasn't like a sudden event. Do you know what I mean? It was like sand, like slipping like between your fingers. So now I've had to sort of pivot to a point in my life or to look at this situation not in terms of like the fight is done. The fight is over and there's nothing that can be done about it.
So do you see them now?
Asterisk. I saw my son this weekend at a volleyball tournament, only because his mother let me know that he had a volleyball tournament, and I drove there. It was in Kitchener. We spent the whole day there. He wouldn't look at me, make eye contact with me, nothing. So I saw him. The last time I saw my daughter was the day before her 16th birthday. So that would be November 8th, 2023. 4, and the last time I talked to my son would have been April of 2025.
So that despite this court order, it is like there's no obligation now for to that you get to see your kids.
No, no, there isn't.
God, holy Jesus!
So this is where, like, when I say the fight is over, that's kind of what I mean, right? Like, I don't have time with my children, and I mean Caitlin's 17 now, and Noah will be 16, or Noah will be 15 in a couple months. But I've pivoted to trying to be like, let them know that I'm here for them if and when they want to talk. So like it's basically just letting them know that I'm here for them, and when I say we talked about, telling the kids about cancer, right? I talked to my therapist about this, and he had suggested that I write them a letter. So I did. But like, I don't know if they ever read that letter, you know. They won't even respond to a text message from me. So it's really, I don't know. It's bizarre to, like, to grieve my children who are very much alive.
Well, yeah, but that's exact. I mean, grief is the long, complex, and painful process of adapting to a huge loss or significant loss, man. And you've lost something huge. And I think we, I don't know, man. Like I think we have this natural tendency, because people do this all the time. Like we compare our situations to other people, and so you might, like, you kind of alluded to, well, at least my kids are still alive, and I think, well, at least in some fucked up way, at least I have some finality, man. Like, you know what I mean? And they're both horrible, but like, I mean, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've, you know, I talk to John a lot, and he just is always talking about how highly he thinks of you. And one of the things that I think demonstrates your characters, you have been very factual, but you haven't said a fucking bad word about their mom this whole time. And I'm sure that's intentional. And I guess maybe something I'm curious about is what's your thought on, like, forgiveness here? Like, how does that play into this equation? Like, is that something you have done? And again, because forgiveness is like ultimately about, it's the forgiver. It's not about the person being forgiven,
Yeah.
right? So, but I mean, what's your? And I mean, I'm not suggesting you should do anything. I mean, Jesus, man, I don't know what I would do in your situation, but like, how do you think about that?
It's like, there's that saying, like, holding a grudge is like holding a burning coal and hoping the other person gets burned, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that I've reached necessarily a point of forgiveness, because there's been a lot that's been taken from me in terms of, years with my children. But I also believe, or wrongly, that it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision by my ex, right? And I think that I take some solace in that. I think that, that, and everybody has their own issues, but I think that she has her own issues that led to her acting in this way. So I don't take it personally. I kind of do, but I think that I just take some solace in that. Do you know what I mean? That we are all imperfect people, and unfortunately, this is how her imperfection manifested itself.
I think it's a super healthy way to look at it, because I think about my first wife, Cindy, and, I found out afterwards, like with all the mental health issues that she went through, and all of that, like the 5 years before death were just an absolute nightmare. But, I found out all kinds of things, man, about like multiple infidelities and all these things. And like our relationship just was not what I thought it was. And, we were together for 16 years. And I guess the way I think about it now is in this our particular case, is that I know she loved me, man. And she loved me as much as she was capable. Like, she loved me the best she could. And ultimately it's not the way I wish it had been. but I mean, she
Yeah,
did her
I
fucking
like,
best, man. Like,
yeah, that hits heavy. Like I've always said throughout this, and I still say to this day, that I think that she thinks that she is doing what is best for those kids, and I believe that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's which, yeah, makes it even more complicated somehow. So, I mean, so at what point when you're going through cancer, like, at what point do you are, are you starting to think like this is going this is going well here? Like, I mean, the treatment is working. Like, I'm starting to feel maybe optimistic. Like, I mean,
Yeah, I one thing that I discovered about cancer, and you know, with caveat, my experience, right? But I believe that cancer is much more a mental battle than a physical one. The physical side is like the doctors have that under control. They've got
right,
the chemo, right? They're making the adjustments. They basically said to me like, your job is to eat, and I did. I gained like 40 pounds during chemo. Um, but staying in a positive headspace, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I have, a Wilma, and I've got, a John, and like the people in my life. Shout out to John, by the way. He's been trying to get us to talk forever. Um, but I'm lucky to have, a great support system. My work, I was very open, even with people at work, even people that you know, uh, that are just like I only have like a working relationship with. Like I would send regular email updates to work, and like uh, you know that has really changed like how I see vulnerability in the context of like leading people. But to answer your question, I felt pretty good throughout. You know, I had a midway PET scan about halfway through, and it had showed improvement. I had some like, you know, there were some scary moments in there. My first week of treatment, so I had just finished my first week of treatment, and it was Father's Day weekend, and so Caden was living with us. He in his last summer, he just finished grade 12, and Alana, our daughter, has been living in Kingston for a few years. And it was Father's Day weekend. I just finished the first round of chemotherapy, and I wake up on Saturday morning, and we have like a front door camera, and I see like, I'm just open your phone in the morning, kind of just check notifications. I'm like, oh, there's activity at the front door last night at like 11 o'clock at night. And I look and I see two people coming inside the house, and I like rewind it, and I turn to Wilma. I'm like, is Alana here? And I like, dude, that was like, I have never cried like that before. It was like a full, like, like they drove from Kingston, like, to surprise me in the middle of the night on Father's Day weekend. And it was just like what cancer, right?
yeah,
Like that gave me so much strength. But like, so that day I was so excited. And I'm like, oh, I'm out, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm chopping up firewood. And like, I'm like, oh, we're gonna make a good dinner. I go get some beef ribs and I throw them on the smoker, and we just have a great day. And I'm like, it was a beautiful night. I'm like, oh, let's have a fire. And so I get the fire going, and I come inside, and I'm like, okay, I'll just go outside. It's like, it's 9 o'clock. I'm pretty tired by this point, but I'm like, go sit with the kids for a bit. And I walk outside, and the cold air hits my lungs, and I start coughing, and I'm coughing and I'm coughing. And I'm like, I've got like, there's like, I'm coughing up water. And I'm like, oh, like just coughing, coughing. I'm spitting. And I'm like, then I go inside and I go into the kitchen and I spit into the sink, and I realize I'm coughing up blood, like cups of blood. So so Wilma comes and sees me, and like they try to prepare you for a lot of things during chemotherapy, but the problem is that everybody reacts differently. So it's like, if they told you all the possible side effects, like you wouldn't remember them anyways.
right, right,
So anyways, trip to Emerge. So long story short, so I spent um, a few days, 4 days in the hospital. Then they had to do. So what happened is the tumor was breaking down, and because it was up against my lung, it was like communicating. Like there was blood basically going into my lungs. That's what I was coughing up. So they also said, you know, tumors like kind of create their own blood supply. So, there was a couple blood vessels that they're like, we have to close off. Plus, the tumor has actually connected two major arteries that aren't supposed to be connected. So they went in, did an embolization. So they basically put like metal coils in the blood vessels so that they clot. And then I was back home, and then like a week later, I got a flu. And like when you have cancer, when you're in chemotherapy, like you get a flu, it's like immediate trip to emerge, and you're like front of the line because you have no immune system, right? So I I spent like a week in hospital there. I had got this infection, and the doctor, the hematologist, came in one morning. And she goes, "Okay, well, good news. We figured out what what you have." She's like, "The bad news is I've never heard of it before, so I can't pronounce it." And then I had to have all these meetings with like infectious diseases because they're like asking me if I've been to Japan recently or if I've been doing cave diving. It's like some super obscure blood infection that I picked up. But all of that to say, you know, as these things were happening, I still felt, because I had such a good support network, it was like, okay, they're going to take care of this. They're going to take care of this. I went to see the hematologist, my regular hematologist, just after that. And she goes, how you doing, Adam? And I said, I'm doing great. And she's like, are you? Because I was just looking at your chart, and I'm surprised that you're saying that. But just because I had such great people around me, and because I had such great medical care, it made it easier to stay positive throughout. And
Amazing.
that's where, coming out of this, and this is both for the cancer and for my experience with my kids, is like, this has to have been for something. And I don't mean in like there's meaning behind it, but like, what meaning can I make from this? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think about people, and John and I had a lot of conversations about this on my front porch during my treatment, as well as like, I was lucky that I had a type of cancer which, although was very aggressive, was also responded really well to treatment. And I was lucky to have these people around me. But what about people that don't have that kind of support network? Like, I can't imagine elderly people, single people going through cancer and like trying to stay positive. Like, that would be just nightmarish. And it was easy for me to look at cancer in that way, but it's only, I would say, in the last week that I've kind of started thinking about my experience with my kids in the same kind of light. There's been a few articles that have been posted about our case, that have helped me look at it in a different way, um, from the perspective of like, okay, the declaration that the court made, like, I think I told you it kind of felt hollow at the time. But there's an article that was written, by a lawyer that you know that talked about how this can be a very important thing for people for whom the court does not have other options. And I've just been turning my mind to that lately, as like, this can't have all been for nothing, right? Like, what is the good that can come from this, for me, for other people, from this? And I think I'm still very much kind of trying to work my way through that.
Man, there's so much there. I really think that I think healing, uh, I think one of the things that people do that really screw themselves up after they have so I'll just talk about, for example, losing a child, but
Yeah.
it applies to any
Yeah.
tragedy, is I have this TikTok channel where I make videos about grief and stuff, and the thousands and thousands of parents, man, have said things like, I'm permanently broken. or like, and all these things. And man, you got to be so careful about what the reality you speak into existence. And I think that part of healing is recognizing that in any tragedy or adversity, there are gifts to be found, man. And you have to, like, sometimes looking for them is can feel fucking impossible. But like, but looking for them, acknowledging them, and integrating them in your life, I think is part of what makes healing possible. And I think for you and me, for whatever reason, we were given this cross to bear, and I'm going to bear it. And I'm going to, it doesn't mean it doesn't suck at times. Of course it does. But even my, the moments when I feel like I think in my situation, because I'm a lot like you. I have a very positive mindset. The thing with losing a kid is it fucking wears you down so bad, man. Like, it's like that I have moments of like, I can't be fucking positive right now. Like, I can't stand the idea to even think about that. But I always know that it's going to pass and that I will be there again. And I think that the way I think about it is like, is I know that I have the choice. Like, one of the powers that we possess as human beings is we have the power to choose how we look at things, and no one can take that away from us, but we can give it away, right? And I think that, like, so what if a wave of grief comes over me, and it's just so intense, I might not have in that moment, like, the ability or the capacity to like positively reframe that or whatever. But I always know, even if it's like totally shitty, I know that when it passes, I will be able to again. And I even know just that conviction is it is so helpful. Like, it makes an intolerable situation just feel a little bit more bearable. And I think for you, what I hear you saying is this is exactly what you're doing. I think you're starting to recognize, and dude, I just want to say is I can see this so clearly, like, in you, like, you are going to make amazing things happen from this experience. And I mean, this being able to sit here and talk about it the way you have is one of those things, but your capacity to help people, like, I think you'll come back to look at these experiences as just a transformational, like, fork in the road of your life, because I am sure that it is going to allow you to help people on and make an impact in a way, in a scale that would never have been possible if you just led a normal freaking life, man. So, and I can see and hear that you're recognizing that.
Thank you for that. I've said to a bunch of people lately, you know, I'm not thankful to have had cancer, but I am beyond thankful for the things that having cancer has taught me.
Yeah,
Right. And that's kind of how I look at it. Um, I can't just let it be like, okay, this is something that happened to me and I move on with my life, right? Like, oh, that's just a chapter in my book, right? Like, you know, I talked about sending like those emails at work, and like, you know, the people from work that like reached out to me, again with personal stories, and like these are people that I like, they're acquaintances, right? They're work acquaintances, right? And we're opening up with very personal stories, and just like, had a conversation with somebody in HR. It was like, she's like, you sharing that like changed people.
hundred
And
percent,
I'm not trying to like, pump my own tires here, but like, we are so, especially like, I work for a crown corporation. We started as like a portion of the military, so we're very, very not touchy feely, right? We still call vacation annual leave. Um, but like, they said that like, it's we don't have a culture where people are comfortable being vulnerable in a work situation. And she's like, I think that you opened a door. And I think that there's just like, I don't know, I was saying the other day, like, I feel like vulnerability is like a superpower,
dude.
where you
100%.
like, you you expose, a part of yourself to people, you know and trust that they won't judge you, and they don't. And they, you know it builds relationships, it builds trust, it builds, you know it just, I just think that there's so so much there. Do you know what I mean? In terms of just being as open and honest and empathetic as you possibly can be.
Oh man, I could fucking go. I know we're not going for a while here, but I could go on about this forever because this was exactly my experience. Actually, is and I found I actually wrote a book about vulnerability because I got so obsessed with this idea because what I realized was like it's funny, like even when you say like these are acquaintances at work, I don't even use that language anymore. They're human beings that I work with, man. Like and we all have the same fundamental needs to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel safe. And but what I realized was I started being so for me it was like I stopped drinking because I had a huge drinking problem and I stopped drinking, and it was like after I stopped drinking my life started to get better. And so then I'm like, I think I'm just going to start telling people that I had a drinking problem and all this stuff. And what I realized is not only did I immediately start having conversations at work, it was like a totally blue collar fucking manufacturing plant in St. Thomas Prestran. And, it was a really difficult place to work. It was losing money. And I was quite a senior leader there. And I started having these like incredible conversations with people, just totally opening up to me. So not only did it feel better, but then what I realized is this is making me a way more effective leader, man, like way more effective because people trust me. And what I realized, and this is why I went down the path of the work that I do right now, is like, because when you're in a leadership position, you're in the relationship business, man. That's everything you get done through the relationships you have with other people. And too many people rely on positional relationships. Like my box on the org chart is bigger than yours, so fucking do what I say. But if you have like beautiful, like human, mutually beneficial relationships, your capacity to just get things done is astronomically higher. And I remember thinking, why didn't anybody tell me this? Like, does anybody know this? Somebody must know this. Like, I'm obviously not the first person stumbling across this shit, but yeah, I mean, it's and I think I look at vulnerability as when I first thought about vulnerability, I was vulnerable about ways that I was fucked up in the past. Now I'm just vulnerable about ways I'm fucked up right now. You know what I mean? Because like we're all
Yeah,
fucked up, man. Like give me a break. Like
truly.
being a human being is complicated, And I think as a leader, if you can be like, yeah, I'm fucked up too, man. Like I'm doing my best here. Like, yeah, we have different roles and different responsibilities, but I'm a human being just like you. And I need your support just like you need mine. And so let's give that to each other, and it just works better.
Absolutely. And one thing I thought about when you were talking about, is like, parenting and being a leader at work, or there's like, they're the same thing basically.
Yeah, totally.
Like the skills of one and the skills of the other are there's so much crossover. But I remember Wilma and I, a number of years ago, were going away on vacation, and Caden was, he had a girlfriend, and we were going away for a week, and he was going to be home, and he's like, he's old enough to be on his own, but we're like we have to have like a talk with him about like, the birds and the bees kind of thing, and that like, because like growing up, you look at your parents, right, and you're like, oh, they just like how did they have things so figured out, and I'm just like like just a pile of spare
Yeah, yeah,
parts, right? Because like,
yeah.
dude, I had to like, steel myself for like 45 minutes to go have this conversation with them. And I was very honest. I'm like, listen, like, I'm very uncomfortable having this conversation with you, but it's a conversation that we need to have. Um, because like, it makes you realize, like, no, my parents didn't have their shit together. They probably did the same thing. They just pretended like they had their shit together. You know what
Totally.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, it's just, I think vulnerability everywhere with your kids, with the people that you work with, it just brings people together. That's it.
Yeah,
You know,
man.
and I shared a lot at work. I think that's my next sort of step. People at work don't know much about, uh, you know, the court case and that, or very select few people. I think, and I plan to start being more open about that. Uh, but so I had like pretty senior leader that was like, shared a very personal story in response to an email that I had sent. But I'm like, it makes you think, and it makes you like, I want to work harder for that person. Do you know what I mean? Because they trusted me with that.
100%, man.
Yeah,
100%. Dude, well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Before we wrap up,
me too.
anything we didn't, I mean, we kind of covered the gamut here, it feels like, but did anything we didn't cover or that you wanted to say that you feel like it hasn't been said?
No, I think we've covered it all. There's brief history up until 2007, but nothing as eventful from then on. But no, I've really appreciated this. Um, I was nervous, I would say, coming into this, not from like not nervous about like, oh, am I gonna say the wrong thing, but just like I think this is, I've been, as you said, very open, but I think this is like kind of the next level of that, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember when I started doing this, like, so when I started kind of like putting myself more out there, it was like 2016. And I remember like the first blog post I posted, I hovered over the publish button for 3 fucking hours, man. Like, and I would go back and I would change a word, just trying to come up with an excuse. And then I put my first video online, and dude, I overthought this so much. And I remember being like, I had this like teleprompter behind my camera, and I was like, okay, this is perfect. I've totally dialed this in. I come in, I publish it. But the time I put it on Facebook to the time I walked in the house, my wife had already seen it. She goes, you look like you have autism, dude. Like, what the fuck, man? Because I was like, my eyes were like
It's just like robotic.
yeah, like my eyes were scanning back and forth. I was like, oh my God, so then I deleted it. And then you kind of start putting yourself out there. And then I remember I was doing like one of my first speaking gigs, and I remember the guy saying, like, I was recording myself, and he goes, it's good, but like, you just got to be yourself, man. And I'm like, I don't know how to fucking do that. Like, when everybody's watching, man, like, and then you realize you just keep practicing at it. And then you realize, then it somehow it just gets easier to be yourself. But I mean, for you, for like the first kind of, I think this is one of the first things you've done like this for this long, dude, you're a natural,
Yeah.
man.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And anyway, I can support you, man. Like, I want to be your friend, by the way.
Well,
I just want to put it out there. So.
Okay, well, we're friends.
Okay.
Do karate in the garage.
Yeah, that's right.
No, this has been really fantastic and a very therapeutic exercise for me. So I appreciate this. I appreciate you.
Yeah, awesome, brother. All right, well, hey, take care. And I know there's not really any way for people. Usually, I ask people where they can find you, but I think what I imagine happening is as you embark on this journey, you're going to have more places where people can find you, whether it's whatever, like on different platforms or whatever. But we'll get to that when it comes. And I'll obviously, if anything changes, I'd love to have you back on, man. Like, really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so. I guess that's it, brother. So for everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I want, again, thank Adam for coming on and being so open and vulnerable and sharing such an intense story of, but also such an inspiring one. So we'll see you next time.